Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Well, it is indeed an honor to be here in the legislature in the summertime. You know, I seriously thought, Honorable Speaker, I might have to go down to the local pharmacy and get one of those neck braces because they did such a U-turn on their policies and principles. It was unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable to see. Oh, and we hear from them all the time. Oh, you're not going to use that word jiggery pokery, are you? You're not going to say this is jiggery pokery. And yet I've watched them over there squirming and carrying on and trying out their reverse gear, trying to slip around sideways, trying to not look embarrassed. It's almost sad if it wasn't so positively entertaining, Honorable Speaker. So, jiggery pokery, liberal style is alive and well, Honorable Speaker. And I want you to know that in spite of what we heard about, the socialists want to build some kind of a wall, it was so sad, such a sad story. And all of a sudden now, 50, we're going to be tough on this deal. We're going to get right on it, and we've got a tax. The free enterprisers call back the summer session, Honorable Speaker, to implement a tax of all things. Again, how do you even imagine such a thing happening? But here we are, Honorable Speaker, and they managed to try to, make it dress it up a little bit about having a couple of things at least to talk about. They had to come up with one more at least to throw in, and that's good. That's good that they did a couple of things, tried to make it look like useful, but I've already heard them praying for relief, Honorable Speaker. They can't wait to get out of Dodge. That's the reality of where we're at today, as they want to be out of here just as quick as they can and try to cover up their tracks from the reality of what we had to deal with when people were living in poverty throughout British Columbia. We've got a government responsible sitting over the largest number of people living in poverty in Canada. People living, trying to rent a place anywhere in British Columbia. It's almost impossible for people to find a place to live. My own constituency assistant had his relative who is a geologist trying to move back here. Do you think they could find a place even to rent? Well, Honorable Speaker, that's the problem here in British Columbia. These Liberals have gone into it. And I want to shift for a minute, and I want to talk about something that I find very serious indeed. And that's this whole business about dim sum and panda bonds, okay? Now, why would I want to talk about that? Now, could it be jiggery pokery? Well, Honorable Speaker, I had a young man who was so priced out of the Vancouver market, he came over to the island, and he came to me with another friend, a constituent, and sat down and said, I'm really concerned about what's going on with these panda bonds and dim sum bonds. And I said, well, quite frankly, I'm like Columbo on this one. I really don't know too much about this, and all I can do is maybe put on a trench coat and try to look like I know what I'm talking about. The reality is that this is a complex issue. But imagine my surprise, Honorable Speaker, when he handed me a document that looks an awful lot like the budget of the province of British Columbia. And it says right here, in market summary for 2015-16, in the fine print. And I had to put the special magnifying device on the Xerox to blow this puppy up so I could even read it, Honorable Speaker. But when you blow it up, when you take the time to actually look into it, guess what it says right here? It says that the market summary, and this is the whole area just before reconciliation and change in debt, it says in the fine print, it excludes RMB 3 billion in brackets, Canadian, 667 million in bond proceeds that have been invested in term deposit, which generates a positive carry. Well, you got to be a Philadelphia lawyer to understand that, to understand what's going on. But, you know, this young fellow said to me, well, it's right here. It's on all the sites on the website, and he gave me what it says in Wikipedia. Well, Wikipedia, imagine my surprise to read in Wikipedia, Honorable Speaker. It says right here in Wikipedia, you can look it up for yourself. It says, the BC Liberal government was the first sovereign entity to buy into panda bonds with the Bank of China. Many British Columbians are wondering if the issuance of panda bonds in BC, and BC being the only jurisdiction in the Americas to have them, has caused more problems for BC resident taxpayers in their ability to buy or rent homes in Vancouver. Oh, my, Honorable Speaker. There is so much concern about money laundering from offshore buyers. Really, so we've got scandal right there in Wikipedia for all the world to see, and it says that there is so much concern about money laundering from offshore buyers in BC real estate that it's not being properly regulated, Honorable Speaker. This is what they're telling us in Wikipedia now. I don't know, maybe the Premier had a look at Wikipedia and thought, my, we better get back in there right away and do something, because the journalists are suggesting that there's a problem. Well, and then he showed me, he said to me, well, have you ever looked at the Bank of China website? And I said, well, not lately. It's not something that MLAs do on a regular basis, especially Cowichan Valley MLAs. But right there in the fine print in the Bank of China website that he pointed out for me, it says, and I really particularly like this line, that they have something called, and I'm gonna assure my Chinese is not very good, Ziyi Tong, ZHIYE Tong service, is a service to provide a total solution package to meet the needs of Chinese customers who did not come to Canada but may have a demand to purchase a house without coming to Canada. Our strategy is to provide the overseas service for a capital regulatory service to offshore real estate. Point number 2 is real estate consulting and availability information, remittance of funds and mortgage services. This is right there on the Bank of China website. Now again, that's good customer service if you're looking for help on how to invest in British Columbia. But you know, imagine my surprise when he went a little further and passed over the province of British Columbia, December 15th, Minister of Finance document. And what does it say, Honorable Speaker? Well, what it says, and I would encourage everybody to go online if it's still there, if it hasn't been hacked by somebody in some country, whether it be Russia or China, as Donald Trump says. It says British Columbia's entry into the China interbank bonds market. And what does it say? It tells all these great things about British Columbia and what a wonderful market we are. But the page that I want to turn to that's most troubling to me is a presentation about these bonds, and it goes on to talk about the Canadian mortgage rules. Really? So we've got a presentation on us getting into selling bonds called, we've got the dim sum bonds, and now we've got panda bonds, and we're busy telling in our presentation that you can go to online, all about the Canadian mortgage rules and how that works. Well, isn't that interesting, Honorable Speaker? It's interesting, and I find it extremely troubling. And I had no words of comfort for this young person who had real concerns about what all this means. And so he actually wrote down, He said, my logic is that the Finance Act compels the Minister of Finance to act prudently when borrowing to invest, and therefore he must provide evidence that he has done so. Why is the BC government not clear and transparent with the citizens of BC and our debt investors, and why is this government not including panda bonds in its total debt summary figure? Well, again, this is a tradesman. I don't know what to tell him. Like, I'm just laying this out because I'm very troubled. You know, ask yourself a question. 10 years ago, did we have a problem that millions of dollars, like I read here on the front page the other day, it said that foreign nationals snapped up $350 million worth of residential property in Metro Vancouver in just under 3 weeks back in June. Now ask yourself, was that happening 10 years ago? Was that happening 20 years ago? Was that happening 30 years ago? I don't think so. I don't think that there were that kind of money. And I think, well, if there was, I'll be glad to see the evidence. But I'm very troubled, and you should be troubled on the other side. And obviously you are. You can't tell me you jumped in your car and raced down here to do nothing. You came down here because you thought, my oh my, we've got a problem. The public of British Columbia are looking around and they're saying, whoa, I can't rent a place, my kids can't rent a place, we can't buy a house, the prices are going through the roof. Yeah, some folks are going to make out like bandits in downtown Vancouver if they got an older house, and if they want to move somewhere else. And guess what? That's what's driving up the prices in the Cowichan Valley. People are selling their big fancy house, well, it could be a rundown house, and buying a big fancy house over in the Cowichan Valley for half the price because the prices are going through the roof, and it is international money, as is now accepted by the folks on that side of the House. They finally had an epiphany. They've come to their senses on the reality that there's something wrong, and we need to do something about it. Is it perfect? By no means. Are we going to vote for it? Well, it's better than the crumbs from the table that we've had lately, but it's a step, a small step, a half-baked step, not well thought out step, because we're already hearing evidence about people finding ways to go around it. So it's extremely troubling indeed, Honorable Speaker. And then, you know, he goes on to say that, and again, what do you say to a bright young guy like this? He says, I think it's wrong that the minister has undertaken 3 billion RMB, 667 million, of credit risk in this transaction. The BC government is borrowing money to invest in a carry trade with the foreign banks. There is no free lunch in finance, and the government needs to be clear that the panda bonds liability exists. And he goes on to say that on June the 29th, Bloomberg reported that the banks in Singapore are holding our BC bond term are now in a negative credit watch from Moody's. The article speculates that the Singapore government would bail out of the banks to save depositors, but what contingencies does the minister have in place should the United Overseas, the Chinese bank, be unable to pay back our term deposit? What commitments has the minister won from the Singapore government to guarantee BC citizens will get their $667 million back? And I have one last question, and then I know we're running out of time. My last question is, who motivated all of this action? Whose bright idea? And I'm troubled when I hear that there's $12 million coming from liberal friends and insiders who are associated with the real estate business. And then I find out that there's all this activity that has nothing to do with what ordinary British Columbians care about. Suddenly all these panda bonds, etc. So who benefited, who invested, why is this risk being taken on behalf of British Columbians, and why aren't we transparent? I don't believe we've been transparent about this whole issue, and it's not good enough. It's not good enough for British Columbians, and I hope that this thing works out better than it is, but I am not optimistic. We're still going to have problems in British Columbia, and it's your actions that are responsible at the end of the day. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.